After Fireman Sebastian rescues a litter of what he thought were puppies from a burning villa, he gets the news that this is very far from the truth. Many people could not believe that these creatures were actually in the United States, and the owners, when Sebastian was making his way through the burning villa, all he could find was a small litter of puppies. He just could not understand how owners could leave dogs this young on their own. He made sure they were brought to a vet as soon as possible. He was still recovering from the rescue mission when he got a call from the vet they were brought to. The vet told him that the animals he rescued were in fact not puppies, but an animal that he had never seen before. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our upcoming stories. Sebastian has been a dedicated fireman for over 18 years. He has saved multiple people and animals over this time, but none have produced a story quite like his latest rescue. What happened to him a while back was quite remarkable. The day started like any other for Sebastian. He had the night shift at the fire station, which normally is quite relaxed. Often it just involved waiting and playing cards with his colleagues, and about every other night they had to respond to something. Incidents he and his colleagues had to solve during a night shift in the past were quite diverse. This could be very small, like a garbage can catching fire after somebody threw a lit cigarette or maybe some fireworks in it, because sometimes people would be asleep when it happened and might realize there was a fire way too late. Luckily, house fires at night didn't happen often around these parts, but it did tonight. When the fire station got the call, they knew there wasn't a second to lose, and Sebastian and his team sprung into action, being on the road within a minute. The men were trained for this kind of situations. They knew this was an important call. When they started getting close to the destination, they barely needed the navigation anymore, as they could see the flames starting to light up the sky, accompanied by lots of smoke. The driver quickly stepped on the accelerator. There was no time to lose. Sebastian and his colleagues were full of adrenaline. When they arrived, it turned out that the fire was coming out of the roof of a relatively large villa. Sebastian and his colleagues had not seen such a large fire for a long time. The good news was the likelihood of the fire spreading to other houses was minimal, but the bad news was that they could already see that the fire could not be put out in time before the house had burned to the ground. Several scenarios ran through Sebastian's mind. By this point, nobody had come out the house yet, so Sebastian knew that he had to get in now. He wanted to be sure that no one was inside the house, and if there was someone inside, he was determined to save him. He came immediately into action. He broke open the door, sprinted inside the house, and first checked the upstairs bedrooms. Luckily, nobody was there, and he quickly went downstairs again because the heat was getting too intense. Through his years of experience, he knew what he was doing. He quickly searched further downstairs for any sign of life. The flames began to get stronger and the fire grew bigger by every second. The firemen had kept the flames at bay as much as possible when Sebastian was in there, but now that he gave the all-clear sign, they changed their efforts to just keeping the flames contained until the house had burned down. He wanted to be sure that he had given the right sign. The neighbors said they had no idea where the owners of the house were, so how could they not be in the house? Was this pure luck? When Sebastian told them about the puppies he required, even more eyebrows were raised. The family didn't have a dog to their knowledge, and they didn't even seem like dog people in the first place. So why was the cage with these little animals in the house? They tried to call the family a couple times, but they never picked up. Sebastian took the number so he could try again the next day. Normally, such a burning down of a house was further dealt with by the police, but Sebastian wanted to speak to the owners about the puppies. He was picked up in an ambulance so it could be checked if he had sustained any injuries during his heroic rescue of the puppies. Sebastian thought it was important that these animals were looked after properly. Luckily, after getting checked in the ambulance, it is concluded that Sebastian has no serious injuries from him going into the burning house, and he can go home that same night again. The fire brigade decided to reward him with a couple days off paid leave so he can fully recover. But as it would turn out, these days cannot be spent resting, as the next morning he is awoken by a call from the Animal Rescue Center. The call came too early for Sebastian's liking, but once he picked up, he instantly forgot his anger. The person on the other end of the line is from the rescue center and wants to update Sebastian on the situation. The rescuer continues to talk about the animal's condition. The animals are still a bit shocked, but they seem to be doing well. They're all in stable condition and the animals are sure to make a full recovery. The wording strikes Sebastian as strange. Why call them animals? They were puppies after all, weren't they? The rescuers had been in touch with the police, but they hadn't figured out who the owners were yet either. The vet has determined that the animals are not puppy. They're not sure what they are. Sebastian is just as confused as they are, but he tries to help as best he can. Sebastian hadn't taken in much notice during the rescue from the fire. The vet had come to the conclusion that whatever they were, they were not native to the United States. Sebastian is more than a little surprised by the vet's conclusions, but there isn't much he can do about it. Mostly he's tired. He finishes talking with the rescuer and goes back to bed. He is determined to enjoy his time off. But this mystery wasn't done with him yet, relaxing and just generally enjoying himself. But it's only a couple of days later when he gets another call. Once again, it's about the fire and the animals, but this call is different from the others and it leaves him more than intrigued about the mystery once more. This call wasn't from the Animal Rescue Center, but rather from the police. They wanted Sebastian to come in and answer some questions. Sebastian doesn't waste any time and goes down to the police station. The detectives talk to him and tell him that they've discovered what had started the fire. This fire had been no accident, and the police were sure of it. They knew that the fire was started on purpose, or at least they highly suspected it. The police had talked to all of the neighbors surrounding the burned-down house. One of the neighbors remembered that the owners of the house had loaded their car up with belongings and speeding away just minutes before the fire started, saying that they'd watched the owners of the house ever since they had moved in. She'd had a bad feeling about them from the beginning, and it turned out her instincts were completely correct in a bigger way than anyone had expected. The owners of the burned-down house had always been closed off. No one from the neighborhood had ever been inside their house and had never been invited over for any reason. The neighbor, having kept an eye on the owners, were able to identify them and the car they'd been driving. The owners had been apprehended that morning in a city just a few hours away. They weren't really talking, but there were a lot of possible connections and theories going around. Unfortunately, the evidence was burned. For the most part, the police could conclude that the owners of the house were not a happily married young couple, but rather a pair of criminals working on a large scale in an international crime ring. They'd been using their house as a meeting and distribution point for their products. Just what were their products? The police were pretty sure from their connections that the pair had been into everything from extortion to drug trafficking and smuggling. One of their latest shipments of products was full of endangered animal species. This is where Sebastian's rescue would come in later. The puppies were going to be stars. Unfortunately for the pair of criminals, the law was hot on their heels. With so many comings and goings from their house, business was booming, which of course caught the attention of the authorities. This is when the criminals made their biggest mistake that would lead to them getting caught. The pair had decided to pack up and move out. They would burn down the house with all the evidence inside once they were ready to go, and unfortunately they actually succeeded with that plan. They had gotten away for a time and the house had burned down, taking most of the evidence with it. While the police had several theories of just what the criminals were into, nothing could really be said for certain since the evidence had been burnt to a crisp. But there is one thing that could make or break the case. The animals that Sebastian had rescued could be the key piece of evidence they'd need to bring the criminals down. After discussing the finer points of Sebastian's rescue of the animals, they told him that they had arranged for the animals to come to the police station under the careful eye of the vet. The detectives thanked Sebastian for his help with the case, but he wasn't done with the case yet. While it was concluded that most of the evidence against the criminals had been burnt with the house, there were some interesting animals in the evidence lot. It would be these exotic wild animals that proved the criminals' actions and landed them in jail. With the pair successfully headed to jail, they decided to talk, and with the evidence of the animals, they were able to bring in more of the international ring, forcing them to bring down their business. At the end of the trial, Sebastian was thanked once again not only by his fire department, but by the police as well. He'd been instrumental in bringing down a large crime syndicate. He continues to fight fires, and when asked, he always says that he was just doing his job, as anyone would do.